Happy Easter, everybody. So glad to see all your beautiful faces this morning to celebrate this day of new life, this day where we're reminded about the renewal happening outside and in our hearts as well, and the opportunity for all of us to accept that, to embrace that new life, and to start nurturing it within our hearts, to allow God's love to flow once again. And so we welcome you here today. We hope this can be a renewing service for all of you, that you can take time during this message and during the music to think about your relationship with God, where it's been, the ups and downs it's gone through, the times where it's been so exciting and you've been so thrilled, and the times where you doubted or were hurt, buried it down deep inside. To allow yourself to accept that our life goes through seasons, that our growth goes through ebbs and flows. But through it all, no matter where we go, wherever we decide to be, that God is right there with us, standing by our side, cheering us along, trying to bring the life back into our lives, trying to open our eyes up to see a reality that's hidden away from this world, that sometimes a veil is blocking us from seeing what God wants to do in our life and how special God sees each one of us, how unique and beautiful we are in God's eyes. And that as we empty ourselves, as we come here and we let go of our burdens, we lay down our burdens, we become a vessel, an empty vessel for God to flow into. That His spring of life, His ever-flowing water can fill that up and overflow into all areas of our life, that we can start seeing the blessings that are ready for each one of us. So today is Easter Sunday. Today is a day we're reminded of this new life, and all around us, spring is budding. We see the evidence of God's hope, of God's promises being fulfilled when we look outside. When we see our gardens coming back to life, when we see the blossoms blooming, when we see the animals singing their songs, the birds calling out for their lovers, come to me, let's start new life. We were so blessed, our little cat, our outdoor cat, had just one kitten, which actually is a great thing, because we didn't know anything about it. It wasn't our cat to begin with, and then it became pregnant this year. But only one kitten, so it's adorable and cute and not overwhelming. So we think we'll keep that one. And then we're going to get it spayed and neutered. So, but we're thankful for the new life that did come, and we're going to enjoy and embrace that. But all around us, we see this joy, this happiness in creation, that all of life is springing forth. And for all of us, right, we also see this opportunity, how the sun comes in at this time of year, and it just flows into our hearts, and it gives us this hope, this joy. People are so happy in springtime because all around us is evidence that new life can come, that no matter what winter we've been going through, whatever seasons we've gone through, that new life overcomes. A new life grows through anything. When I look at my driveway and the little cracks in it, the new life comes right through, and I got weeds and grass coming through in all the spots it shouldn't come. But life is formidable. It perseveres. It endures. It overcomes all obstacles. So today we're celebrating that. We're enjoying that idea that no matter where we are, that new life can happen. That new opportunities can present themselves to us. Today, we celebrate resurrection, and resurrection means coming back to life, right? It means to be woken up, to renew our life. It is because we once died that we need to come back to life. Now, each one of us has had periods where our eyes were closed and we didn't see the beauty all around us, the love that was presented around us. You see, in our hardest times, right, our most difficult times, we don't allow love to come into our lives. We block out the people that care about us. We shut ourselves out. We die on the inside. But it doesn't mean that love is not still pouring into our lives, waiting for us to open our eyes once again. And so today we celebrate that new life, that resurrection. In 1 Corinthians, I jumped too far. All right. But it says, 15:20, it says, "But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep." You know, fallen asleep here, they're using this different term that we, not just dead, but maybe more like fallen asleep. I'm reminded of a movie, Princess Bride. And they bring him in, the dread pirate Roberts, and they say, well, is he mostly dead or all the way dead? And he says, because there's a big difference. I can work with mostly dead. And it turns out that he was only mostly dead, and that they could revive his life. So here it's fallen asleep, it's mostly dead, that there's still a glimmer of hope. And I think that's the truth, right? That God's seed is within every single person on earth. Whether they know it or not, that God, the Creator, is embedded somewhere deep inside of us. And some have put more walls up between us and God. Some of us have more distance, have been away longer, and so it seems more dormant, right? But the fact is that God's Spirit is there no matter what, waiting to be renewed, waiting to be awoken. For since death came through one man, the resurrection of the dead also comes through a man. For as all die in Adam, so in Christ all will be made alive. So even though all lost that relationship with God, we separated, we lost that relationship, it was renewed again through Christ. Today we celebrate that fact that, you know, even though the Romans and those that didn't believe did their best to snuff out the life of Jesus, to say, your message is dead. This kingdom is a mockery. They just laughed him out, and then they killed him, right? And they said, this is the end of it. This whole nonsense of rebellion of this new kingdom, of this new life is ended. And they snuffed it out. But today we celebrate that his Spirit overcame that. That though he was dead, he visited his disciples. He visited many people. He showed that life continues to go on long after we're buried. That the Spirit cannot be killed. And he overcame that and gave us that opportunity to, in our own lives, receive that resurrection Spirit. But you know, it's interesting because earlier on, when Jesus raised Lazarus, he came and said, I am the resurrection. Long before he died, he said, I am the resurrection, that if you believe in me, that eternal life will be for all of you. So it's not that we physically are dead, or we have to physically die in order to taste God's kingdom, to taste God's truth, to taste God's promises. But we need to acknowledge God's existence and allow that Spirit to live within us. And in those moments when we surrender, when we lay it all down, when we commit ourselves to a new way of life, that resurrection begins to happen in our lives. And the principle, it even talks about the resurrection doesn't just happen in a moment, but there's stages of resurrection, that we go through steps. That maybe you've been trying to overcome some difficulty in your life. You've been trying to find a relationship. You've been trying to repair a relationship. That just because you let God in your heart today, it doesn't happen overnight, but the seed starts to be awoken. The light starts to emerge. It starts to pierce through the concrete. And it starts to reach out to the sun once again, allowing it to grow and develop. So the resurrection is a beginning point. It's bringing us back to a point that we can even glean God's love, that we can even see that God has been there all along. So today we celebrate the fact that resurrection is happening all around us, and resurrection happened through Christ. And once again, we recognize that so many years ago, actually, Father, Reverend Moon, went to a mountaintop and received the resurrection again. When Jesus came to him and said, let us continue this mission. Let us awaken the sleeping spirits. Let us awaken those who have been calling out my name, that have been looking for a purpose, that have been lost and wandering. Many people that were calling out God's name still were missing the point. That each one of us holds the key to the kingdom of heaven, that within our midst is the opportunity to create true love, to create real relationships, to overcome our selfishness, and become people that are together in relationship with all other people, that we can create these relationships that are thriving, that give life, that are nourishing. So Reverend Moon brought this new awakening, and he took on this mantle, but then very quickly passed that on to all of us. That the resurrection happens through us, that we each can take on this role to be life givers, to give that opportunity for rebirth to our friends, our family, our loved ones. And the more that we give, the more that we sow, the more that we invest, the more that new life comes apparent in our own lives. That when we get out of our heads and out of our woe is me and start looking out for our brother and sister, that love starts to blossom. When we start giving forgiveness and grace and love, encouragement, when we start lifting up our brothers and sisters, that love is awoken inside of us, and we say, wow, there is new life. And I am that new life. So today it's an invitation for all of us to accept that new life, to receive what God has been hoping to give to us. You know, the winter months we see a lot of death, right? A lot of ending. We see the weakness fall away. The parts of trees or the plants that couldn't make it through anymore, that didn't have the vitality anymore, they die away. And it can be a sad time. It's a hard time sometimes, right? To go through the winter months, to be looking for some greenery, to look for a new life. But everything dies away for a reason, to make way for the new life. The old passes on, its glory, its joys, its hopes, its dreams, onto the new. And as the weakness falls away, as the things that have been hindering the growth of creation falls away, new life emerges. And so it is with all of us. Right? During the winter months, the season in our life where we were dormant, that we were distant from God, we go through a lot of difficulties. And we start to look at all these things that have been burdening us, that have been heaped upon us, these vines that have been choking out the light that we should be accepting, that we should be receiving. And those things die away. And we should be grateful for this, because it means new life is about to emerge. When I was speaking with my mother-in-law weeks before she passed, she had a moment of clarity where she came to me. She said, Jario, everything's going to die. I'm going to die, and all things die. She said, but don't worry. Don't feel sad. And it was hard for me, looking at her, and I loved her. And for her to say these things, she said, because if these things die, then new life can come. Then something new can grow. Then something new can thrive. So we need to allow the winter month to happen in our life, to allow certain things to fall away. Maybe we have some expectation, some intention, some hope. Maybe we have an old habit that's been kind of gnawing at us and we've been trying to let go. Maybe something that used to bring us joy, but now is just a clutter. Now it's just something that's getting in the way of our new relationships, our new hopes, our new dreams. We lay that down at God's feet. We say, let that is not growing anymore, that's not thriving anymore, let that go. Because God, I know you have something more in my life. I know you have something more for me to do. I know that you have a joy that I have not seen yet. That there has been a light that has not been awoken yet inside of me. That there are dreams that can be fulfilled that I don't even know yet. We lay it down and we trust in God. We trust that God knows what is best for us. God knows a new life that He wants to give to us. In Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, there was this time Paul had all these people coming up to him saying, how is this new life going to happen? How are the dead going to rise? And he's like, well, I don't have any diagram to show you. I don't have any way to explain that to you. And they were all kind of just going at him. And they said, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? And he says, how foolish. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just the seed, perhaps just a hope, a wheat, or something else. But God gives it a body as He has determined, and to each seed, He gives its own body. This resurrection is not about who we are today. It's not about just the relationships as they are today, because God has something much grander for all of us. God sees something bigger for all of us. God sees us as His children, as His inheritors, as His co-creators. And when God looks at us, God says, I'm not finished with you yet. This isn't all that I have for you. Lay down that seed. Lay down your burdens. Lay down your regrets. Lay down your resentments. Get rid of all that stuff. Your failed hopes, your failed expectations, the things that you thought you were trying to make in your life that didn't work out. God says, I have something much bigger for you. But you've got to be willing to let it down, to let it go. To bury that. And there's a new body, a new existence, a new self that we can't even imagine, we can't even fathom yet. That can be reborn inside of us. And each day when we make that determination to empty ourselves and to let God in, we start seeing this new life emerge, this new opportunity for who we can become. In Genesis 2:17 it talks about, it says that after creating Adam and Eve, God told Adam and Eve, do not eat of the fruit, or on that day you should surely die. But we know when we look at Adam and Eve, they had kids. Either God was lying or God meant something else than what we think about physical death. I tend to trust God, and so I think, well, something else died within them. Their connection to God, that hope, that spring of new life, that opportunity to seize the day to create something beautiful in life, died away. God is waiting for them to recognize their true inheritance, to recognize their true identity, to lay down their guilt and their shame and to come back to God, to surrender themselves to God, to open up and say, God, what would you have me do? What change do you want to see in my life? And on that moment, God can take that condition, that offering, and give them new life. But on that day, we had that separation and we wandered, right? Humanity wandered, and we went through many different generations where people didn't even see the value of life, didn't see the value of one another, didn't see their own value, because they didn't understand who they were and who they were made in the image of. But as we know now, we see that we are God's children, that God has been longing for, that God has been desiring to build a relationship with. We're the children that God has been looking for. And when we open ourselves up to God, when we come back as a prodigal son and just put it out there, right? God isn't going to shame us. God isn't going to guilt us. But God's going to embrace us and say, welcome home. Now let's see the land that I've prepared for you. Let us see the gifts that I've been preparing for you. Let's start creating this new life now. That's what God's waiting for all of us to be resurrected, to accept our resurrection. But we need to make that choice, to take that step, to lay down what's been there before. It says also in Corinthians about the resurrection, that as new life is going to come, so will it be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable. You know, some of our ideas, some of our hopes, some of our dreams, some of our relationships, they can come and go. But what is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, but it is raised in power. It is sown as a natural body, and it is raised a spiritual body. Because, brothers and sisters, this flesh and bone isn't what makes us us, right? This is just our vehicle for the physical world, but what's within us, that's what's beautiful. That's what's being resurrected. That's what's being renewed. And that resurrection, again, doesn't have to happen when we die, but it can happen today, now. It can happen when we make the choice to let God into our hearts. Father said, through the resurrection of Jesus, the whole creation came to have a new master. The way it was paid for mankind to make a fresh start. Jesus won the spiritual victory in the struggle against Satan. There were these lies being sown into our hearts about our worth and about how God didn't care about us, that we were unworthy of God's love. But Jesus awoken us to the fact that God is our heavenly parent, and how much our heavenly parent would do for his children if they would just ask, if they would just come to the door and knock, if they would just come and ask for forgiveness, for new life, for a resurrection. But it's not just asking for a resurrection. Jesus pushed us further and said, go and sin no more. Change your ways. Live a new life. Create your life on new principles. Don't carry those old ideas of an eye for an eye. But love your enemy. Love your neighbor as yourself. We need to recognize our true value and the value of all people. And we need to lay down the old principles that were guiding us, the old things that we were holding on to. And say, God, I'm going to receive this new spirit, but I'm also going to start to take steps to change my ways, to become Christ-like, to become like your true son or daughter. I'm going to live up to that hope, that desire you have of me. Because I know, God, that you have so much more for each one of us. You have so much more that you want to give to us. But we need to step into that new life. So I want to give us 3 principles to take with us from this Easter Sunday as we're receiving this new life, as we're receiving this new joy. I want us to remember 3 things. First is to lay down our burdens. You know, we've all been carrying a lot of things with us, right? All of us, right? When someone goes see a therapist, right, the first thing they start asking about your childhood. What happened in your childhood? You know, we have things that have happened to us. Words that were spoken to us. Someone might have hurt you. Might have attacked you. Someone might have let you down. Made you feel unworthy. Sometimes we hurt other people in our immaturity. We lashed out in our anger towards someone else. We spoke words that weren't true but felt good at the moment to us. And we damaged someone else, and we're carrying that guilt inside of ourselves. You know, I look back, I see different things that I had done when I was younger. And I didn't know how much they affected other people. You know, one time I was at a camp, and I thought, hey, it'd be funny, whoever goes to sleep first, we're going to prank them, right? So waited till the first kid fell asleep, and I poured toothpaste all up in his shoes. And I thought, well, this is going to be funny. Because the next day we had a big hike. And it was really funny for me at the time, and I thought it was hilarious, and other kids did too. And And then I forgot about it. I mean, it didn't really matter. It was a really stupid prank, and I forgot all about it. 2 years later, I was out at on Pure Love Alliance. We were doing this tour to promote purity and love, right? And we were out going around, and I was talking to one of my friends, and she said, you know, that guy really doesn't like you. I said, why? What's wrong? Oh, you don't remember? 2 years ago, you put toothpaste in his shoe. I said, really? That sounds terrible. That wasn't me. But he held on to this, right? And he hated me. And I still don't know if he likes me. I bumped into his brothers and stuff, and we get along well. But I didn't realize, right, what difference even a little prank, even a little joke, in my eyes, might have meant to someone else. But there's things, to be honest, right, that we've done that's worse than that, than a little prank, than a little joke. We've hurt people's hearts. And sometimes we carry that along, and a voice inside of us keeps telling us we're not good enough, that we're terrible people, that we're guilty, that we have to carry this regret, this resentment around with us. So whether it's something we've hurt others with, or a pain that someone else has inflicted on us, we still carry that around, and it becomes a weight. And at first, it's not so bad. We can just stuff it inside. But over time, those weights, those burdens become insurmountable. We're not able to keep moving forward. A little bit of weight, a little bit of pain, a little bit of hurt that we carry inside of us, built up over time, cripples us and restricts us from living the life that we ought to live. I was doing Pilates the other day, and I tried it out for my first time with my wife. She's been trying to get me to go for a while to work on my core. And I guess we went to the beach, and then she said, you got to do Pilates with me. So anyways, I went there, and, you know, it's a lot of women in there. There are a couple other guys, but I was like, okay. And I saw they all had these 2-pound weights, so I went in and I grabbed the 5-pound weights. And I walked over, and then the teacher laughed, and she said, please put those back. You can't do those. And I had to do the walk of shame, and I returned them back. But I realized, you know, what you're doing like these things where you're just like holding your arms out with the weights. And it's really light at first, but after a few minutes, and she does this thing where she says, I'm not going to talk very long and make you hold that pose very long. And then she just keeps going and going, and you're out there and you're, ooh, these 2 pounds became really heavy. Right? So a little weight goes a long way when you keep carrying it with you, when you don't let it go. And so God's asking us, just let it down. Let down that resentment you hold out towards someone else. Honestly, they've probably forgotten about it, and you're the only one being hurt now. And like I tell my kids often, well, you can't control what the other kid is going to do. You can't control who's going to take your toy. You can't control if they say something mean. All you can do is control how you're going to deal with it. So you might be justified in holding your anger. Maybe they really did hurt you. But for your own sake, lay that burden down at God's feet. Offer it up in a prayer. Say, God, I've been carrying this around, and I've been shaming myself because of this. I've been holding up this image of myself as imperfect, as broken, as messed up, as disfigured because of what someone said to me. But today I'm going to choose to lay that burden down. I'm going to lay that pain down. I'm not going to let it define who I am anymore. I'm not going to say this is my image. I'm going to say what you say of me. I'm going to look in the mirror and say, I'm not what everybody else was saying. I'm what you are saying, God. I'm going to lay this guilt, I'm going to lay this pain down, and I'm going to take that new step forward. So first off, we need to lay it down. We need to let go. And if we do need to still make an apology, we need to go out and make that apology. Call up someone today. Say, you know, I want new life. I hope you can have new life. But I understand that I hurt you in the past. That my words were unwarranted. That pain was not justified. And I want us to let it go. I want us to make amends. I want to release you and ask that you can release me. And let's move forward. Lay that burden down so that God can come into your life. Next is surrender. You know, we desire so much for control in our life, right? Sometimes we even hang on to a mediocre life. To a life that has no risks, no challenges, because at least we're in control. Right? We hang on to a job that doesn't fulfill us anymore because at least I know that I'll be safe. For many of us, right, we've been hurt, we've failed before, we made a mistake before, and we're retreating into a safety place. But God has some other plan for your life. God has another dream, another story written, and He hopes that you can fulfill it. He hopes that you can live that story out. And so we surrender ourselves to God. And we say, God, not my will be done, but your will. Make my life greater than I can ever imagine. The other thing I learned in Pilates when I was finishing up the other day was the instructor said when she started out, her biggest problem was she was looking to the left and right. And she was forcing herself, even through pain, to do what the lady on the left of her was doing. She didn't want to accept that she had to start somewhere. That she had to start from zero, that she wasn't in the best shape of her life, and she had to accept that that person's been here longer, that person's on their own journey, that person has their own strengths, that person has their own background, and I'm just starting my story now. And so she said, my biggest battle was my own ego. My own desire to be the best in the class, to show up off everybody else, right? To be put together, to be strong, to not show pain. But she said she was lucky because her instructor took her by the side and said, you know, you really are pushing yourself in ways that you shouldn't, and you're going to hurt yourself. Your body doesn't work like her body. So just follow my instruction. Don't push yourself in an unnatural way, but just surrender yourself to the process. And she said, there's a process, and you will get to where the lady on your right is. But you go at your own pace. Go to the process. Surrender to the process. Allow yourself to go through those stages, those steps that are designed to get you stronger. I think that's the way it is for me a lot of times when I try and change. I try and force it. To punch that habit in the face. To change my way, just through my sheer willpower. But I find myself failing when I try that way. Instead, when I've surrendered, when I allow God to work in my life, I see progress. It's step by step. It's not that huge jump that I was hoping for. But the steps are working. The stages work. There's a growth stage for a reason. There's a process for us to develop the strength to overcome bigger and bigger obstacles. As we come to God, as we surrender, as we come and kneel down in prayer, as we ask God to start coming into our life, it doesn't mean that you're a saint tomorrow, but maybe you have a kinder word today. Maybe you're more forgiving today. And God uses that as a foothold to continue to grow in your life. To say, hey, look, you're on your way. You're making progress. I'm so proud of you. I'm always reminded, Bill Murray in one of his movies, What About Bob? He says, baby steps. And he always talks about baby steps. Just baby steps, baby steps. And it's not about changing their whole life in one day, but it's about the little incremental steps. As we allow God into our life, as we start to say, hey, I'm going to read one sentence today from the Bible. I'm going to pray for 1 minute today. As I surrender to God and just say, God, start working in me. I know that I'm not your best yet. I'm not who I am supposed to be yet. But I also know that you're not finished with me yet. That you don't make broken things. You don't make mistakes with us. That you make something beautiful through each one of our lives. That each one of us is designed in a unique and beautiful way. And God, you are just beginning this process as I surrender myself to you. And sometimes it's painful. And if we have it our way, we will run away from the process. God will shine a light in some part of our life and we'll say, wow, God, no, don't go there. Don't bring that up. Don't remind me of that flaw in my character. Don't remind me of that hurt that I haven't processed yet. But we surrender to God and say, God, you work in me. I know that you will use all things for your good, that you will use all things to create a more beautiful creation. That your intentions for me are pure and holy, and they are good. And you have a great plan for my life, and even if it's painful, I surrender to the process. And I will do this step by step, day by day. And if I have to ask for forgiveness every day at the end of the day, if I have to ask for a little more grace, a little more patience, then I will continue to do that. I will continue to surrender to God and say, God, start changing me and make me into your intended creation. And finally, forge new ways. So as we lay down our burdens, we surrender to God, we have to decide to forge new ways, to make new paths in our lives. Recognizing that some of the paths had already reached their dead end. That path took me as far as it was going to take me. There's nowhere else to go, but I need to start a new path, a new journey. To start introducing new habits into my life. To say, hey, I put that down, I'm surrendering to you, and now I'm going to go and live a new life. I'm going to live out the fruits of the Spirit. I'm going to be more generous. I'm going to be more kind. I'm not just going to seek out justice every day, but I'm going to look for a way that we can work together to resolve our problems or resolve our differences. I'm going to take steps to be healthier, spiritually and physically. That I'm going to start choosing each day to add new practices into my life. I'm going to look at your principles and I'm going to say, okay, this idea of growth, it's going to take time, but it also requires my responsibility. And I'm going to choose today to introduce a new habit, to eat a different kind of food, to start watching different kinds of shows, to start listening to different kinds of music, to start listening to my better friends, the ones that speak life into me and not shame and doubt, the ones that encourage me to live my best life and not the ones that just agree with me that everybody else is wrong and I'm right. I'm going to start looking for those new paths, those new relationships, those new words that can instruct my life. And each day I'm going to take a new step in a new direction. I'm going to look at my old path and say, that wasn't working out for me. That wasn't everything that God intended for me. That wasn't the hopes that God intended for me. But God has something much bigger, and I'm going to take those steps into that new life. So I'm going to start exercising more. I'm going to start praying more. I'm going to start taking some time to meditate, to reflect on my life. I'm not going to spend 3 hours on Netflix at night to wind down, but maybe I'm going to take 20 minutes of that and move it over to some kind of prayerful or intellectual pursuit. Right? I'm going to start taking new steps in a new direction so that that new life that God has promised to me, that God has planned for me, that God has destined for me can start becoming a reality, that I take steps into that new life. Because as Jesus, every time he forgave someone, he said, go and sin no more. Go and live a new life. I accept your burdens. I accept your mistakes. I'm okay with that. And you've come to the right place. Because my God, my parent, has a new plan for you. lay that down, surrender, and start taking those new steps in a new direction. In 1 John we read, we know that we have passed from death to life because we love each other. But anyone who does not love remains in death. But anyone that doesn't extend that love remains with their eyes shut. And we see these people every day. We pass people every day on the street that are alive with no life. They have the lights on outside, but there's nothing going on inside. And maybe we've been going through that journey ourselves. Passing each day. Just hoping for night to come so it can be over and we can get to the next day. Maybe we've been there, right? Where joy keeps escaping us. Where a sense of purpose, a sense of value is escaping from us. And we're reaching out and we're looking for something that's meaningful in our lives, but we keep hitting that dead end. Like the city of New York with all its lights and music and sound and movement, but so many people have no value, no purpose in their life. And I've been there. That dark night of the soul, we just think, how could God love this? How can my parents still be proud of me? What value do I bring to this life? We question ourselves, and we beat ourselves up. But today I want to remind us, and if that's you in this position right now, to just offer yourself to God. God, your heavenly parent, God who loved you since you were born, God who looks at you each day and says, this is my beautiful child. This is the one that I've been waiting to meet. This is the one that I want to build a relationship with. I've been longing for you to open your eyes and to see that I'm here with you. If you've been in this darkness, if you've been in the winter too long, if you've been suffering, if you have a friend that's just blank in their life, that is looking for purpose, reach out to them and let them know, and I want you to know that God is here. That God is in this room, that God is waiting for you to say, hey, here I am. I've been gone for too long. I've been trying to make it on my own. And I found out I don't have the strength to keep moving forward. But God, I know that you do. And I know that you want to be here with me. And so I'm going to accept you into my life. I'm going to accept your love into my life. I'm going to accept these words that I read about myself. I'm going to accept what my parents have been saying about me all along, that I am loved, that I am cherished. And I'm going to start nurturing that life. And I'm going to give that life a chance to grow, a chance to thrive. I'm going to give that life an opportunity to get its day in the sun, where it can receive God's love and start to be nurtured and start to be nourished and start to move forward. Brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you today to receive that resurrection in your own life. And to be a testimony to others about what God can do in our lives, one step at a time, one day at a time. As we lay our sins down, as we lay our burdens down, as we say, God, please forgive me for my trespasses. I surrender to your will. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Let your will be done in my life as it's been done in countless other people's lives. And I'm going to take the baby steps to start creating that new life, to start forging those new ways, that your new life can grow in me, that I give that seed a chance to become a reality. Finally, in John, we read, very truly, I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him who has sent me has eternal life and will not be judged, but has crossed over from death unto life. Restoration is happening now. Resurrection is a possibility for all of our lives. For everybody you know, new life can happen in them. Their life can have meaning, can have value as we offer ourselves to God. So brothers and sisters, Let us thank God for this Easter Sunday. Let us thank God for the new life that has already been happening. Let us thank God for every step God has shown us. And let us open ourselves up now to let that new life well up within us, that spring of life, to overflow into all areas of our life. Let us thank God now and offer in our thanks and a prayer. Dear God, our Heavenly Parent, we come before you so grateful for your love. We know how moved you are to see us here today. To be seeking you out. To be seeking out your heart. To be seeking out your love. God, we want to no longer believe the lies that we are not worthy, that we are not good enough, that we are not cared for by you. But God, we want to receive that resurrection and say, God, I am here with you. And I know that you are here for me. God, let us be a testimony out into this world about what God can do when we believe, when we receive that love. And let us be sanctified through our actions. Let us restore ourselves through our steps today. God, be with my brothers and sisters here. God, they are beautiful and wonderful people. They are all your children. These are my brothers and sisters who I love dearly, God, and I pray that you can work in their lives, that you can renew a hope for all of them, that they can be used by you as your hands and feet, that they can be used by you to mend a wounded heart, to care for the weak, to care for those that have given up on life. God, please use these people as your conduits of love. God, we thank you so much for this Easter Sunday. We thank you for our true parents. We thank you for Jesus Christ, who came to show us a new way, to show us what we were capable of, to show us about the life that we were meant to live, God. And let us believe that in our own hearts and receive that and make that transformation today. God, we thank you. And I pray your blessing upon all of your people here today. And I want to offer this up to you. I pray this in all of our names and in your holy name, God. Amen and on you.